Hello everyone, Daniel here. In today's video, we'll be talking about tips writing functions in Python programming language. In my last video, I made video concerning Python program functions in Python programming language, and I will also include the link down in the session comment section below. So today's video will be focusing on tips writing functions in Python programming language, which goes in line with the Python enhancement proposal, and it is also a way of making your code readable and scalable. So tip number one, keep it simple and focused. Functions should ideally do one thing and do it well. Avoid creating overly complex functions that try to do too much. I want to show you a good example here. Take a look at these two functions. Process data and send mail. This is a function that processes data and send mail. One function doing this. It is too complex. Always make your functions to be precise and do not create overly complex function. So the good one here is to create a function called process data and create another function called send mail. One function to process the data, it will call another function that will send the mail. Tip number two, use descriptive names. I made mention of this in my video. Then we're talking about variables in Python programming language, and I made mention of tips creating a good variable. Which one of them is rules creating a variable rather? Which one of them is your variable name should not start with a number, and again your variable name should be descriptive. This is also applicable in functions. Tip number two is use descriptive names. Choose meaningful names for your functions that clearly indicate what they do. This makes your code more readable and maintainable. If you look at these two codes here, descriptive names, we have a function called fun that accepts two parameters A and B. Is not that much descriptive. It's a bad example. A good example of this is a function called calculate sum accepting two variables num1 and num2, and the code goes down there. Tip number three, follow the dry principle. The dry principle is short for do not repeat yourself. Don't repeat yourself. If you found yourself writing similar code in multiple places, consider refactoring it into a function to avoid duplication. A good example of this is one, we have a function called greet user that says hello user, and another function that calls greet admin that says hello admin. You can see these two functions are similar. A good example of this is to have a similar function that says greet user that accepts the role of that person the function would greet, which the role could be an admin or a user. Then you can equally do this using one. Tips number four is use parameters effectively. Use parameters to make your functions more flexible and reusable. Consider using default parameters value and keywords argument when appropriate. Here is a good example of that. When you have using a parameters effectively, we have a function that greets, it takes a name and greeting. Now here is a keyword argument that takes the word hello. You can say greeting name. You can pass in the person's name without passing the greeting parameters. In this personal aspect, it is called an argument. You can say greet Alice or greet Bob, and what do you want to greet Bob for? Goodbye. Then tips number five is what? Return statements. Make sure your functions return the correct values, avoid side effects, and ensure that your functions are pure. A good example of this, the ways return the same output for the same input. You understand? A function, they always return the same output for the same input. A good example of this is down here. Is even, it returns num modulus of 2. We all know this. It returns the remainder of this num modulus of 2. If it's equals to 0, then it's even, but if not, it's odd. The next one is calculate sum A and B, returns the summation of the two numbers. The next tips is Always text your functions. Write text for your functions to ensure they work as expected. Consider using a text framework like unit test or pytest to automate the testing. So unit test or pytest, if you're writing the functions, maybe in kind of writing complex functions, instead of testing this manually, you can automate those testing. And a good example of this is here. Using a unit test, we have a function, we have a class. We subclass from the unit test or test case, and we have our test to ensure that 1, 8, and 2 equals 3, which is the summation of 1 and 2. Then the next one assert equal -1 and 1 is 0, which is actually true. Then the next tip here is use function annotations. Not only function annotation, but variable annotations. Python allows you to annotate function parameters and return values with their expected types. This can help you improve code readability and maintainability. Now, we all know that Python is dynamically typed language. You understand that typecasting is dynamically. Now, using type annotation can help you or make your code readable and maintainable, thereby expecting or knowing the type of variable the Python will return. And the next one is document your functions. Yeah, always document your functions. I found myself using docstring either in Python or in class. I find myself using docstring, and this is a code example. Then for using function annotation, you can see this the add function that takes two parameters, which is a and b, though the parameters are not self-descriptive. But you can see here the type annotation is showing the type of expected parameters, the type of expected parameters of this function, and it returns a whole number, which is an integer as well. Tip number 9, consider function composition. Instead of writing long code, complex functions, consider breaking them down into smaller, more manageable functions that can be composed together. A good example of this is to take a square root of a number and sum it to another number, which is square number and add 2. When you square this number, you add 2 to it, and this is a good example. Then the last in my list here is know when to use lambda functions. Most of the times, it's not every time you have a function, you create a large, or a function is actually a block of memory. By definition, we say a function is a block of code that carry out a task, and it must be called upon before executing such task. Now, function takes more memory than a lambda function. Yeah, both of them are functions anyways, but a lambda function is simple. Lambda functions can be useful for writing small inline functions, but they should be used judiciously and only for simple operation. So it's not for any bigger operation you use normal function, then for simpler operation you still use normal function. So you can find yourself interchanging them by using lambda function whenever the need arises. Thank you very much for staying up with me this time. I also encourage you to let me know what you think down in the comment section below. If there is any tip that I did not mention here, you can also let me know or tell me what I'm doing wrongly. I also encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos like this. Thank you, and follow for more.